During the earliest period of history, all life originated from the crucible, the primordial form of the current earth tree within which the aspects of every living creature was blended together. The crucible's primal vital energies give rise to a new species with every imaginable combination of traits: amphibian, avian, septilian, mammalian, and countless others besides. The lands were dominated by beasts who had gained intelligence, as well as ancient dragons whom they serve. Dragon Lord Plesudisax has said to have been presided over this era long before the establishment of the Golden Order as the first Elden Lord. However, the fledgling planet was not alone in the vast expanse of the cosmos, and before long, a host of outer gods and fell creatures of the starry void took notice of its existence and exerted various degrees of influence over the young planet and its civilizations. Of these entities, the Greater Will played the most direct and significant role in shaping the new world, and is said to have sent a golden star to the lands between, bearing a beast which was the living incarnation of the Order. To spread its teachings and cement its control over the populace, Greater Will relied on bizarre hand-like creatures collectively known as the Fingers, which served as both its missionaries and enforcers. After a long and brutal times of conflict, this led to an establishment of theocracy dedicated to the Golden Order, a system of absolute laws embodied by the Earth Tree and sustained through the Elden Ring's power. See, it's very important to realize Farum Azula, the primordial land, wasn't always flying up above as we see it in Marika's era, but actually was a part of the lands between as a significant landmass. In fact, Plesudisax's reign as the first Elden Lord was under a previous Elden Ring and a different outer god than the Greater Will, the outer god of death. When the golden meteor bearing an Elden beast was sent to the lands between by the Greater Will, due to the destruction of the meteoric gravity, the capital Farum Azula ascended high up in the skies, no longer a part of the lands between. Marika, being of Numen origin, is of a different land from the lands between, and before establishing as the dominant theocracy, the Stormlord, Glowmite Queen, and Fire Giants, outer gods and armies alike stood as the most persistent oppositions to Marika's Golden Order. The Numen are descendants of denizens of another world. They are long-lived but seldom born. The Numen are said to have come from outside the lands between, are in fact the same stock as Queen Marika herself. Numens have come from the lands between on Greater Will's meteor from another world. If Marika wanted to establish the Golden Order of the Earth Tree under Greater Will, she needed to eradicate all opposition first. Only then could the age of the Earth Tree flourish in the lands between. But before we get to this opposition with the Stormlord and the Fire Giants, we need to examine the outer god of Farum Azula, before the Greater Will, the god who has abandoned Elden Lord Plesudisax, whose current whereabouts are unknown. The Dragon Lord whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time is said to have been the Elden Lord in the age before the Earth Tree. Once his god was fled, the Lord continued to await its return. Before we go further, if you're well versed in Elden Ring's lore, you might have an objection brimming in your mind right now in regards to what I've been saying all along, in the particular way I've explained this origin story. See, I've talked about Farum Azula and dragons before Greater Will's arrival to the lands between. Since it's written here that Plesudisax to be the former Elden Lord, I've already made a logical blunder, right? Well, not so fast. All of this was intentional. These series of events in the exact way that I've described is supplemented officially by From Software themselves. In the strategy guidebook number 1, in the very end, the lore and world building is explained in a sequential manner. And guess what? Farum Azula, beasts and dragons are explained as the ultimate origin story. Then the Nigredo will send the vessel beast and Marika, who is of Numan origin from another world. Marika starts her political and military struggle to assert her dominance as the Golden Order, trying to exert their influence on the world with an existing outer god and a political infrastructure in its capital Farum Azula. As we can clearly see from this image where we fought Malekith, a different Elden ring was the metaphysical representation of the lands between in this primordial era. In the era where a different outer god was in operation before the greater will, and we see this outer god trying to reassert its dominance after being plucked from the Golden Order in the base game, doing its best to revert back to its former glory in whatever way possible, just like the other outer gods like the Mother of Blood or the God of Rot, Godwyn's curse and Malekith's destined death. These are extremely important to understand this particular outer god. But before we get to this and who this outer god is exactly, let's read the Old Lore Talisman description. A legendary talisman depicting the ancient king whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time. It is said that the ancient royal city of Farum Azula has been slowly crumbling since time immemorial. The phrase time immemorial means a time in the past that was so long ago that people have no knowledge or memory of it. The Golden Order was created by confining destined death. Thus, this new order will be one of death restored. This means the Elden ring of the primordial times in Farum Azula, shown in this picture, was from the outer god relating to death in some ways, and with Godwyn's rune, we're restoring that death plucked from the Golden Order in its creation by Marika. Formed of the two Hallowbrand half-wheels combined, it will embed the principle of life within death into order. The life was embedded into death before it was plucked from the Elden Ring by Marika's Golden Order. Those who live in death, or in other words, the spirit world, was natural, and military structures like the D brothers was not trying to murder and erase those who live in death. The outer god of the primordial lands, the reason for Godwyn's affliction of Deathroot curse, the god who has fled from Plesudisax and he who is still awaiting his return in Farum Azula, was none other than the outer god of the Twinbird. Shield featuring a vividly painted Twinbird. The Twinbird is said to be the envoy of an outer god and mother of the Deathbirds. When you look at this picture in Farum Azula, you will see two birds just in the same exact way portrayed in this Twinbird kite shield. As you can see, this is not a dragon or a representation of Plesudisax. These are clearly two birds. The Twinbirds, the original envoy beast of an outer god of Farum Azula, symbolizing the duality of life and death. Think of the Twinbird as an envoy similar to how Elden Beast is an envoy to greater will. There are two specific items in the game that describes the Twinbird's contrasting qualities in this shield. A talisman adorned with red feathers, once used in ancient death rituals, and a glorious end awaits those who cling so tenaciously to life. The heart sings when one draws close to death, thus does one cling so tenaciously to life, to render up a death worth offering. The bird phoenix, reborn from its ashes in death, the duality of life and death embedded into a single realm called living in death, the primordial duality existing simultaneously. As you can see, the Twinbird, similar to how the qualities of living beings were blended together in the Crucible era, in this age, death was imbued within life, not yet separated distinctly like in Marika's order. In Farum Azula, the outer god of Twinbird is a doomed, crumbling realm of a relic long past, a relic long past its usefulness in Marika's Golden Order, the death-denying order of the Earth Tree, of the greater will, a depiction of all that Marika disdains and rejects, her shadow aspect as an analogy to psychology, now a realm forever crumbling after a meteor impacted it long ago, up in the skies by the meteor bearing a golden beast sent by the greater will. As you can see from the gold being offered on the dead, Farum Azula was not just a primitive society. Having gained intelligence, the beasts must have felt how their wildness slipped away as civilization took hold. With this bestial society became more complex, they started burying their dead, often associated with ritual sacrifices or burial with sacred objects. Our distant cousins Neanderthals have also buried their dead in a similar manner, maybe even with the hope of an afterlife. As you can see, the current beastman of Farum Azula, after America's order turned into the dominant power in the realm, the intelligence that was granted to them has been revoked. They have reverted back to their primitive existence. The reason for this is clear. The Twinbird being replaced by the Greater Will as the dominant outer god has resulted in its powers being sealed, and the intelligence it granted to its subjects, beasts, who were serving their masters, dragons, have been revoked. Just like how the concept of death is suppressed in America's order. All the beastmen buried in Farum Azula have ornate gold jewelry, a very specific and informative design choice. The real-world inspiration, the Varna Necropolis, was discovered in the 19th century in modern-day Bulgaria. Each of the bodies was buried with a remarkable array of gold jewelry. Some of the tombs had no body at all, only a symbolic grave with golds decorated regardless. Only when the researchers had come across the burial number 43 did they realize the significance of their find. There was more gold jewelry in this particular burial site than all the other prehistoric sites combined. Necklaces, gold bracelets, ornamentations, you name it. 3,000 gold artifacts were found, meaning 6 kilograms of gold in a single burial site, estimated to be about 6,000 years old. See, when we look at the dead of Farum Azula, we can clearly see the inspiration. One part of the Twinbird, the Death Birds, were preparing for its other half, its inevitable afterlife in death, in the spirit world. In America's age, after Godwyn has become the Prince of Death and infested destined death in the lands between, one of the protectors of the soulless children of America, the headless Luthil, makes it clear. Spirit of a headless knight who lays the mausoleum soldiers, Luthil sacrificed her life so that in death she could continue to protect the soulless demigod until their revival, earning her the hero's honor of earthly burial. The Wandering Mausoleums houses the unwanted soulless children of America. When Ronnie has imbued the Black Knives with destined death on that fateful night and had given Godwyn a soulless death, he was chosen by the formerly suppressed outer god of Twinbird to be its vessel for influence of the lands between via Deathroot's curse. Unlike the other demigods, Godwyn had an earthly burial. It was the perfect opportunity for the outer god of Twinbird to exert its influence via the Deathroot's curse of those who live in death. As you can see from the mausoleum knight armor, the influences of the Twinbird, who is the mother of all death birds, is clear from the feathers protruding. Those wings are also directly referenced by name in the armor itself. Armor worn by headless knights who endlessly guard the wandering mausoleums. The wing-shaped ornaments in its back evoke the death bird, a self-inflicted curse that ties the spirits of these loyal knights to the land, having willingly beheaded themselves so that they may serve their masters in death. Similarly, when we look at the mending rune of the Death Prince, unlike what you might believe at first glance, this is not destined death being released back into the world, as we already did that after defeating Malekith. The Rune of Death Prince is different than Destined Death. It is the age of those who live in death, a nod to the outer god of the primordial lands, embedding the principle of life within death into the order. The Twinbird represented life and death simultaneously blended together, just like the Crucible era. Ancestral spirits exist as a phenomenon beyond the purview of the Earth Tree. Life sprouts from death as it does from birth. Such is the way of the living. Coming back to Farum Azula, the golden jewels bear striking resemblance to bracelets and trinkets. See, in real-world prehistory, before the more sophisticated metallurgy was developed, societies relied on the most easily accessible metals for production of jewelry. They did not produce alloys by heating and combining different metals. In other words, all the gold in Varna Necropolis was unalloyed. But for the context within Elden Ring, it was primordial. The Greater Will sent a golden meteor bearing a beast into the lands between. Yet this gold is yellow, and this is not the primordial color of unalloyed gold. The difference of color decided the quality of the gold. Great Sword of Ordovis, one of the two honored as foremost among the Crucible Knights. This sword is imbued with an ancient holy essence. Its red tint exemplifies the nature of primordial gold, said to be close in nature to life itself. We can see this red primordial gold in the Farum Azula dragons, before they fell out of grace after Golden Order's dominance. The lightning incantations they use is all red. We don't see this unalloyed red gold in material form because it hasn't been created yet, but can see its power in Farum Azula Dragon's Primordial Lightning. Dragon King Placidusax's Craigblade's weapon skill contains something called Primeval Lightning. Just like many Dragon Lightning incantations, it has a red as opposed to yellow color, painting a stark contrast to paltry dragons of today after Twinbird's banishment and Golden Order's enslavement of the Rune of Death. Piercing Gravelstone sword containing Primeval Lightning, a portion of the Dragon Lord's power gained from a remembrance. This weapon commands great power over the paltry, mortal dragons of today. You can see the Primeval Lightning Thundercloud here. Temporarily transform into a red thundercloud and fly through the air, and then plunge down with a lightning-infused blade. See, in the Alchemical pursuit, the unalloyed gold is red, not yellow. Nigredo describes the final stage of maturation as red gold, and Philosopher's Stone is also associated with the color red, signaling alchemical success of turning a substance into gold, the end of the magnum opus, which is why Miquella, in his current form, is cursed with eternal youth and is not representing the true unalloyed gold. In the DLC, most likely we will help Miquella finish his alchemical process of maturation by adding redness into his yellow gold, resulting in Nigredo. As we know from cut content, Saint Trina is another persona of Miquella and are actually the same person. A proper integration of these two personas would result in mixing of colors purple and yellow, and that would give a dark red-brown color in a high saturation blend, just like Ordovis' sword. The red tint of gold, the magnum opus of alchemical pursuit, the true unalloyed gold. Hello everyone, if you want me to continue making videos like this, consider lending me your support on Patreon. Link is in the description. Any and all help is appreciated. Please subscribe to the channel to show your support. Like and comment below this video telling me your thoughts. I answer all of your comments. This was part 1 of the Farum Azula and Dragon series, which I'm to conclude with part 2. I hope this was a comprehensive and rich introduction to this aspect of the lore that I rarely see people discuss. I only wish I made it justice, trying to send my regards to this amazing game and its lore. Thank you, Miyazaki. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.